I had a friend of mine when I was in college who was blind, and we were at a party together one night, and some person came up and asked him, "Would you rather be blind or deaf?" And he immediately said he'd rather be blind. And it kind of took the person aback. It's like, "Well, why?" And he said, "Blindness cuts you off from things, deafness cuts you off from people." And that stayed with me. That stayed with me a long time. My name's Bruce Beck, and I live over in Normal. I'm a therapist by trade, counselor, which feeds into the story because, of course, it's very crucial that I be able to hear what people say. Uh, so, so this whole thing has been rather an important part of my life, finding someone that I can go to and say, "No, really, this is my livelihood we're discussing here, not just my ability to interact with other human beings like my wife and children." I have always had what I would call mechanized hearing. Um, and it's been an interesting experience because every time I get new aids, I hear different things. Back in 1960, when I got started on this journey, the way we calibrated a hearing aid was with a jeweler's screwdriver. We'd take the aid off, fiddle with it a little bit, put it back on. Does that sound better? I think late 90s, maybe even early 2000s, and which was right around the time, coincidentally, that Natalie arrived, and we started getting more computerized. And now it astonishes me what we're able to do. I mean, I go in, they just basically plug the computer into the aid. All of a sudden, things sound, as far as I can tell, the way they're supposed to. Although I'm taking their word for that. And the other part to it that's really crucial, though, is it's a Bluetooth-enabled device which goes through my aids, so I can run my phone directly into my aids. As a therapist, that's crucial because that means if someone calls me and they're telling me what their concerns are, I'm the only one that can hear it. So I can be in a crowd and taking all this confidential information in, and it's still perfectly confidential. Plus, it's good. I mean, telephones have never been things. I have wrestled with what to do with telephones most of my life. Um, there was a period of time where I would take my aid off. There were times when we could use a telecoil type adapter. And nothing really worked terribly well until this, which ran the sound directly into the aid. So, and that's been helpful, tremendously helpful. Right now, with everything I do being on Zoom or something similar, and I can hear clear as a bell. In fact, people have commented that you're participating more in meetings, and I'm like, that's because I can hear what's going on without 12 people talking at the same time. I carry with me the aids that I currently wear, have a thing called a Widex, which is a little boxy thing that I carry, which allows me not only to adjust volume remotely if necessary or directionally, but also has this really cool feature called Zen. I get, as many hearing impaired individuals do, I get really bad cases of tinnitus periodically, especially central Illinois, triggered by allergies and blood and air pressure and, you name it. But Zen is it's like a little soundtrack, and it's actually random noise, but doesn't sound like it. It sounds, at least one track sounds kind of like a Japanese lute music. And but I'm the only one that can hear it. So it's my own little private soundtrack. So when I'm in meetings that are not very interesting or something, I just click over to that and sit there and smile. And, so it's brought me hours of entertainment. However, my wife has learned that if I'm smiling blissfully, it's probably not because of what's going on in the meeting. There have been times, honestly, when I have said, wait a minute, I'm an individual who does not hear well. What am I doing in this profession where it's absolutely crucial that I hear and comprehend what other people are saying? And then I realized it actually makes me a better therapist because I have to work harder to understand and comprehend what other people are saying and doing. And people need to look at when they're considering whether they should or should not get an aid, they should consider it that way. This is something that can enhance your life. Being able to hear is something that most people take so for granted. Case in point, there was a point, I think it was last fall, and I was looking out the window and I was listening to the crickets. Just nice background noise. I was getting ready for bed and I was looking out the window, just savoring the sound, and I took my aids off and the crickets were gone. And it's such a simple sound that we take for granted. Now, there's a lot of annoying noises out there too, don't get me wrong. But, the sound has such an ability to enhance our lives. I had a friend of mine when I was in college who was blind. And we were at a party together one night. And some person came up and asked him, would you rather be blind or deaf? And he immediately said he'd rather be blind. And it kind of took the person aback. It's like, well, why? And he said, blindness cuts you off from things. Deafness cuts you off from people. And that stayed with me. That stayed with me a long time. But there's also a degree of, I wonder what that really sounds like. There's a degree, someone asked me at one point, if you could actually have your hearing back, would you do it? And I really had a hard time with it. Because I'm assuming that I am within 1 or 2% of actual sound. Okay, I think that's a good goal to have. But what that extra is like, I don't know. Again, it gets into that issue of what's it actually supposed to sound like. And I really had no idea. It's like being in a dark room and trying to throw a ball at a target. And you don't know where the target is. It's something that, okay, this is happening, but I can do something about it. As I'm getting older, for a long time, my hearing was basically pretty stable. Now, as I'm getting older, I'm starting to see a little deterioration, which, that's my worst case scenario. But it's the natural aging deterioration more than anything, I think. So I keep that in that context. But I urge people, and I have urged many people over the years, at least get it checked out so you've got a baseline. So that if at some point you notice, I'm not picking up on certain sounds, you've got something to compare it to. I have a cat that's got a very loud purr. Alarmingly loud. And that's one. Now, part of that's vibration, but a lot of vibration. But the purr, or I'll sit out. We have a 4-season room. I'll sit out in the 4-season room sometimes while my wife's still asleep and just listen to the wind in the trees. This last week's been very good for that. But things like that, and it's usually, and music, of course. So yeah, I mean, I are going for a walk in the forest, and just picking up all the nature sound. It's very refreshing for me. It's allowed me to participate in the world more. I think that's the piece that people forget. I've had a number of audiologists, obviously, over the years. I've outlived a number of them, which is always a good thing. My other audiologist had retired, and I knew Deb, who was at that time the owner, and she said, "Well, why don't you come over to our place?" And I was like, "Sure." It's an element of trust that's crucial in all of this, as far as I'm concerned. You want to go to a doctor that you trust, but I don't go to the doctor very often, but I hear stuff every day, at least on the days that I put my aids in. So, if my wife's out of town, that's another story. I've had behind the ear. I went back to behind the ear, which is kind of the unusual, but it's what I'm used to, I guess. I'm not one to walk into a place and say, okay, I know what I'm doing, and, you guys, but there should be a certain level of respect, I think. I mean, 60 years is a long time to be wearing these, and I'm aware of, this doesn't quite sound quite right. Or, yeah, this is a little off. And maybe I like to think I'm better at explaining what that is, but it's really hard to do sometimes because, describing the sound, this doesn't sound right. I'm sure they get that all the time, and it's like, I'm sure it drives them crazy, like going into a doctor and saying, well, I have this funny pain, Well, it's sort of in here, but, sometimes it's over here, yeah. But I have been treated with what I will say is utmost respect here. I have known Natalie, 15 years, and we have developed, I guess, a respectful professional friendship, if that works right. And I had that with Deb as well. And it's kind of to the point, if I come here and Natalie's not available and I have to see one of the others, it's kind of like, okay, fine, I'll do this. And they're all wonderful people, I'm sure. But, you get used to someone. And so, but there's that. It's critical to have that, okay, is this right? Yeah, if it's not right, okay, give me some explanation as best you can. And this is, I have absolutely nothing but praise for Bloomington Audiology and everybody here. It's a comfortable environment. It's just a place that feels good. People are treated well and respectfully, and they even tolerate my sometimes bizarre sense of humor. So
let's close on that note.